You weren't born by mistake. That pain you carried, the isolation you felt, the doors that closed, they were all part of a higher architecture. You weren't abandoned, you were set apart. The world told you to fit in, but your soul kept whispering, you were never meant to. And every time you tried, something inside you broke a little, not because you failed, but because your spirit was never designed for imitation. You were carved from a rarer light, and rare things are hidden, not because they're forgotten, but because they must be protected. Let's say this clearly. Chosen ones are not random. They are remembered. You are here because something greater whispered your name before you ever spoke your first word. Being chosen isn't arrogance, it's remembrance, a deep soul memory that says, I came here with a purpose, and the world will try to make me forget it. You don't resonate with most people. You see behind the smile. You feel energy shift when you enter a room. You know when someone lies, even if their words are sweet. You're not crazy. You're called. Called to walk a path most avoid. Called to stand when others fold. Called to hold light in a world drowning in its own shadows. Here's a truth you probably learned the hard way. You can't be around everyone. Not because you're better, but because you're different. Your presence disturbs falsehood. Your silence convicts the loud. Your energy exposes what people spend their whole lives trying to hide. That's why they misunderstand you. That's why you feel like a foreigner in your own city, even your own family, because your frequency doesn't fit. And that's not rejection, that's protection. You're wearing spiritual armor, not visible, not metallic, but divine. It shields your light from being drained by those who only take and never give. The restrictions in your life, the relationships that didn't work, the doors that didn't open, the moments you thought you were being delayed, they were divine filters, not failures. The chosen are not limited, they are preserved. You're awake in a world that's asleep. So the divine removes distractions. It isolates, it redirects, it closes doors with force, not to punish you, but to keep your soul clean enough to carry your mission. Remember, not everyone gets delayed because they're lazy. Some are delayed because destiny is still preparing the stage. Ever wonder why crowds exhaust you? Why parties feel fake? Why superficial conversations make your skin crawl? That's energetic truth in motion. Chosen ones vibrate on a different level. You feel everything. Words, tones, body language, it all lands deeper. You absorb the energy of the room. You carry others' pain. You intuitively know when someone's hurting, even if they smile. And because of that, you repel the masses. Not in anger, but in frequency. You weren't meant to be understood by everyone. You were meant to guide those ready to understand themselves. This is the beginning, brother. This is the knock on the door you've been ignoring, not because you didn't hear it, but because you were taught to silence it. You were chosen, not to be perfect, not to be praised, but to be true. And truth is a lonely path, but it's the only one that leads home. Stay with me. This is not where you end. This is where your remembrance begins. There comes a time in the life of the chosen when the world they once knew begins to fall away. The laughter of the crowd no longer soothes. The praise of the many no longer satisfies. The path that once felt familiar becomes steep, narrow, and eerily quiet. And in that silence, they are called. Not by voice, but by a pull so deep it rattles the very bones of their being. This is not abandonment. This is selection. Divine separation is not exile. It is refinement. It is the sacred severing of what no longer serves the soul's higher purpose. The chosen do not walk alone because they are unloved. They walk alone because the weight of their mission cannot be shared with those not built for the storm. The silence? It's not empty. It's coded. Every still moment is filled with instruction. Every hour of isolation, a sculptor's hand shaping the spirit for what it must one day carry. Many will misinterpret the solitude of the chosen as misfortune. They will mistake your distance as pride, your withdrawal as weakness. But it is neither. It is protection. You were never meant to blend in. You were never meant to fit the mold. You were set apart, not because you are better, but because you are needed elsewhere, in places where conformity cannot survive, in spaces where truth is rare and courage is costly. And so, the divine begins to strip you of the unnecessary. Friends fall away, plans collapse, comforts dissolve. Not to punish, but to prepare. Not to destroy, but to fortify, because you are being built for something that ordinary cannot endure. This isolation is not a void, it is a chrysalis. And here, in this sacred loneliness, you begin to hear differently. You begin to feel the vibrations that others miss. You notice the lies that pass for truth in the noise of the world. You detect the spiritual poisons in the things once called harmless. And you no longer have the luxury to pretend not to see. You no longer have the freedom to sleepwalk like the rest. This awakening is irreversible. Once you've seen, you cannot unsee. Once you've felt the hand of the divine pressing against your chest, you cannot go back to living like it means nothing. The chosen are often misunderstood not because they are strange, but because they are ahead. They are reminders of what many have forgotten, that life is not just breath and consumption, but fire, calling, and transformation. And for that reason, they are kept apart, elevated not above others, but beyond the reach of distraction. Your isolation is sacred. It is the incubator of vision, the womb of power, the soil where divine downloads are planted before they are ever shared with the world. And just because no one sees you now, doesn't mean you're not being seen by the one who matters most. Let them misunderstand you. Let them walk away. Let them say, "You've changed," because you have. And that change is the beginning of the true you, the awakened you, the chosen you. So when the room gets quiet, and the invitations stop coming, and the phone no longer rings, remember, silence is not absence, it is presence, the kind that only the chosen will ever understand. Let the separation continue. Let the refinement deepen. Because the crown is not given in the crowd. It's forged in the fire of sacred solitude. There is a moment every soul must face. A moment when the door is closed, the hand is pulled away, and the heart that once felt safe turns cold. Rejection. It arrives like a storm with no warning. And yet, if you stand still long enough, if you don't run from it, you'll see something strange in its reflection. You'll see yourself. Rejection is not the enemy. It is the mirror. It does not show you who left. It shows you who you were before they did. Before the silence, before the betrayal, before the fall. It reflects the parts of you that were reaching, begging, pleasing, bending, just to be enough for someone who never saw the full weight of your soul. And in that reflection, if you are willing to look, not with ego, but with truth, you will begin to see the architecture of your awakening. Because rejection was never a mistake. It was a recalibration. You were not denied to be destroyed. You were denied to be redirected. The no was not a wall, it was a compass. The silence was not punishment, it was a pause from the noise, so you could finally hear yourself. All along you thought they were walking away from you, but in truth, it was you walking away from the versions of yourself that were too small, too dependent, too silent about your own value. You see, the people who rejected you were only messengers, instruments in the hand of something far wiser. Their exit was your entrance into sovereignty. Their betrayal became your boundary. Their silence gave birth to your voice. And yet, the wound still stings. You ask, Why did they leave? Why did they ignore the very love I gave so fully? But the real question is this: why did you ignore yourself for so long just to be chosen? Rejection exposes the illusion that your worth was ever tied to being accepted. The truth? You were always chosen, just not by them. You were chosen by the fire, chosen by the path, chosen by the pain that forges warriors, not by comfort that breeds dependency. And now, here you stand. Alone? Yes, but more whole than you've ever been. Because the ones who rejected you didn't see the real you, but the mirror of rejection did. It saw the warrior under the wounds, the fire under the silence, the calling under the chaos. And now that mirror is asking, will you keep begging for entry into places you've outgrown? Or will you finally walk like someone who doesn't knock, but builds the door? Rejection was the strategy all along, not a detour, but the design. It stripped you to your essence. It revealed what applause had buried. And now, the silence you once feared has become your sanctuary, your clarity, your crown. So stop looking back. They had to go, so you could arrive. Because the true ones, the ones who see you, respect you, rise with you, they are not found in the places that rejected you. They are drawn to the flame you became after the fire. This is the paradox. Rejection is what brings the real to you. And in that mirror, in that brutal reflection, you do not see shame, you see destiny. So stand tall, chosen one. Don't flinch, don't chase, don't explain. The rejection wasn't personal. It was preparation. And now? Now you're ready to enter the next chamber. The Temple of Standards, where you'll learn how to protect what rejection revealed. There is a silence that comes after rejection. But it is not empty. It is sacred. You enter this new place not with open hands, but with closed gates, because something inside you has shifted. You no longer beg to be let in. You build temples instead. Temples of standards. This is not about arrogance. This is about clarity. After the mirror of rejection shows you who you truly are, you begin to realize something unshakable. Not everyone deserves access. You see, before the fall, your gates were wide open. You called it love. You called it patience. But in truth, it was the absence of standards. You were not choosing. You were hoping to be chosen. You let in chaos dressed as charm. You gave your peace to those who came only to feed, not to stay. And you suffered. Deeply. But now you are no longer standing in the ruins. You are standing at the threshold of a temple. And here, not everyone gets to enter. Standards are not walls to keep love out. They are walls to keep self-respect in. They are the silent guards of your peace, the invisible lines drawn not to punish others, but to protect your growth. Every time you say, "This is not enough," you are not rejecting a person. You are honoring your evolution. In the past, your silence meant surrender. Now it means discernment. You no longer argue for your worth. You don't negotiate your boundaries. You don't chase to prove your value. You let people reveal themselves, and when they do, you decide. Because the awakened man does not measure love by intensity. He measures it by integrity. And integrity shows itself in how people show up, not what they promise. You see, the Temple of Standards is built brick by brick with your new language. The language of no more. No more half-effort. No more late replies. No more love that only comes when it's convenient. No more cycles of almost, of maybe, of someday. No more bending backwards just to make someone stay who was already walking away in their heart. This chapter of your life is not about what you attract. It's about what you allow. Let others say you've changed. Let them call you cold, distant, harsh. Let them say you're hard to love. What they're really saying is this: you've raised the price of access. You're no longer cheap. And that's exactly the point. Because the man who has seen the fire no longer plays with matches. He protects the flame inside. the one it cost him everything to ignite. So now, when someone approaches you, they don't just meet your charm, they meet your standards. They don't just see your face, they feel the boundaries behind it. You've become a gatekeeper of your own peace, a priest in your own temple, and the days of explaining your worth are over. Let them knock. Let them wait. Let them show, because you no longer open for potential, only for proof. This is the new law. You don't accept love that doesn't recognize your value. And if that means walking alone, you walk alone, like a king without a court, like a wolf without a pack, like a temple without visitors. Because the silence of high standards is better than the noise of low expectations. And soon you'll see, those who can't meet your standard will fall away, and the ones who can, they won't flinch, they won't hesitate, they'll rise. So guard your temple, let your silence speak, and above all, never lower the gates again for someone who knocked only to leave you in ruins. And now, prepare to enter the next phase. We enter the death of the old self, where you'll bury the version of you that tolerated what your new soul could never survive. There comes a moment not marked by thunder or applause. No one claps, no one notices, but you feel it in your bones. The old self is dying. Not all deaths are physical. Some happen in silence, in dimly lit rooms, in the space between a message left unread and a heart left unanswered. In the echo of, "I'm fine," when you're not. In the weight of every version of you that bent, tolerated, and begged to be seen. But that man is gone, not because he was weak, but because he outlived his purpose. The man who tolerated breadcrumbs thinking they were meals. The man who mistook chaos for passion. The man who stayed silent thinking that silence was strength, when really it was self-erasure. He is no longer needed. You are not here to fix what broke you. You are here to bury what betrayed you. This death is not revenge, it is release. You let go not because you hate, but because you've outgrown. And in this burial, there are no tears, only fire. Fire that burns the masks, the excuses, the hopeful illusions that someone would come back and make it right. No one is coming, but you are rising. Understand this, grief is not weakness. It is the final proof that you cared. But after grief comes clarity. And clarity demands one thing: a clean separation from the man you used to be. You no longer wait for apologies that will never come. You no longer shapeshift to be more lovable, more digestible, more convenient. You no longer carry the guilt of outgrowing people who never grew. You no longer resurrect the past in hopes it might act differently this time. This is the chapter where you stop fighting to be understood and start living to be whole. The death of the old self is a sacred sacrifice, because in that death, something holy is born. The man who does not chase, but attracts through truth. The man who does not explain his worth, but embodies it. The man who does not return to what he had, because he's building what he deserves. Rebirth doesn't begin with a plan. It begins with a funeral. Bury the version of you that tolerated late-night texts from people who couldn't show up in daylight. Bury the version that called it love when it was really just attachment. Bury the version that kept doors open for those who never planned to stay. And in the stillness of that grave, listen closely. You'll hear something rise. A quieter you, a stronger you. A you that no longer needs permission to protect your peace. This is the man who walks forward not with rage, but with resolve. He doesn't post to prove. He doesn't speak to be heard. He moves like someone who knows because he's seen the cost of forgetting. And now, you remember, not just who you are, but who you refuse to be ever again. So burn the letters, delete the number, close the door that kept swinging in the wind. This chapter is not about looking back, it's about never going back. Because what's ahead requires all of you, the focused, grounded, unshakable you. And that version cannot be built on broken soil. The death of the old self is the final rite of passage, and few make it. But you just did. Now it's time to move into the proving ground. We enter the discipline of power, where silence becomes not just a reaction, but a strategy. Where strength is no longer loud, but deeply, consistently lived. Power is not what they told you it was. It's not loud, it's not public, and it's never desperate. Real power is silent. It's in the man who walks away when his name is mocked, not because he can't respond, but because he no longer needs to. It's in the eyes that don't flinch, the hands that don't tremble, the heart that doesn't chase what already let him go. This is the chapter where silence stops being a response and becomes a discipline. Because when you no longer react, you reclaim. You stop explaining your piece. You stop justifying your standards. You stop managing their emotions while abandoning your own. And that is power. Not the kind they recognize, but the kind they feel. Because nothing unsettles a manipulator more than a man who cannot be provoked. You see, the undisciplined man confuses motion for strength. He speaks quickly, responds impulsively, shouts when ignored, and calls it courage. But the disciplined man? He waits, he watches, and then he decides. Not based on emotion, but principle. He has trained himself not to seek approval, but alignment. He's not looking for closure from those who only offered confusion. He's not proving anything to people who never saw him clearly. This man doesn't chase apologies. He watches patterns. He doesn't beg for truth. He embodies it. This discipline isn't just about emotional control. It's about direction. Every word you don't say is energy you preserve. Every silence you hold is a fortress they can't breach. Every time you choose not to react, you become more precise, more lethal, more free. This is how empires are built, not in chaos, but in cold clarity. And now, that's you. You don't respond to every provocation. You don't attend every argument you're invited to. You don't answer the knock of ghosts pretending to be home again. Because you've become something rare. A man who leads himself. A man whose silence speaks more truth than their paragraphs. A man whose boundaries are not loud, but absolute. And understand this. They will test you. They will send little messages, subtle jabs, and masked curiosity. Not because they want you back, but because they want to know if they still have access. But the man of discipline? He does not flinch. He knows that access to him is earned, not assumed. He does not let the past knock twice. He does not water old gardens hoping for new fruit. He walks forward, eyes clear, heart calm, soul aligned. Because he has mastered the one thing they never expected him to: restraint. And through that restraint, he becomes unreachable. Not because he hides, but because he has ascended. This discipline becomes your shield. It becomes your sword. It becomes your signal, not to the world, but to yourself, that you've changed. Because power without discipline is noise, but power with discipline is law. And now, you write the law of your own life. No more lowering your standards to be understood. No more stepping down to be liked. No more shrinking to make others comfortable. You rise, and you remain, and in your silence, they will hear what they never listened to when you spoke. This is your discipline now. Hold it like a weapon, wear it like armor, live it like a creed. We step into the great reversal, where those who once ignored you return. But now, you're no longer waiting. You're watching. From the mountain they never thought you'd climb. There comes a time when the world shifts beneath your feet. Not because you changed, but because they finally see what they once ignored. The ones who left without explanation. The ones who vanished when you needed them most. The ones who treated your silence as weakness, not wisdom. They return. But this time, the story is different. You no longer chase their attention. You no longer seek their approval. You no longer scramble for fragments of a past that no longer serves you. You stand unshaken, a mountain amid their restless tides. This is the great reversal. When the rejected become the unapproachable. When the overlooked become the desired. When the silent become the untouchable. But this power is not about revenge. It is about realization. They come back, not to reclaim you, but because they see the light you carry. Not because they changed, but because you grew. Not because they earned you, but because you no longer belong to their old world. You have become the flame they cannot extinguish, the presence they can no longer ignore. The man who walks in peace, untouched by their noise. And in this reversal, you learn the final truth. Your worth was never theirs to give or take. It was always within you. So when they return, watch. Observe without need. Let their presence be a mirror, reflecting how far you've come, not where you began. Because the man who has mastered himself does not need the world's validation. He owns his silence. He commands his space. He lives by his own rules. And now, dear brother, this journey you've walked with me is only the beginning. If these words have stirred something in you, if the fire inside you burns a little brighter now, join us. Subscribe to the channel Chill Then Conquer, where we walk this path together, where silence is power, and every step forward is a victory. Return anytime you need strength. Return whenever you need clarity. Return because here you belong. Until then, keep your head high, your heart steady, and your spirit unbreakable. We will meet again, stronger than ever. Stay the course, chosen one. The world is waiting. Thank you for walking this path with me. See you soon.